You can laugh if you want, the little boy said, his voice steady beneath the bright stage lights. But one day, kids who sleep in cars won't have to anymore. For a moment, the massive convention hall seemed frozen between surprise and amusement. Then the laughter came. It started with a few chuckles near the front row before spreading across the room like a wave. Hundreds of well-dressed guests, business leaders, investors, and executives smiled, shook their heads, and exchanged amused glances. At the center of it all sat Nathan Whitmore, the celebrated CEO whose name appeared on magazine covers and television interviews. He leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and let out a laugh louder than the rest. "That's quite a dream," he said with a grin. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" More laughter followed. Under the spotlight stood Elijah Brooks, a 9-year-old boy with deep brown skin, neatly trimmed curls, and a worn blue notebook tucked against his chest. The notebook was old. Its corners were bent, and strips of tape held parts of the cover together. Yet Elijah held it like it was the most valuable thing in the room. Around him, giant screens displayed the title of the event, Dream Pitch Day. Students from across the state had been invited to share ideas that could change the future. Most participants had arrived with polished presentations and expensive technology. Elijah had arrived carrying a notebook. The laughter continued for another few seconds before slowly fading. Everyone expected him to lower his head. Everyone expected him to step away from the microphone. But Elijah remained exactly where he was. His small fingers tightened around the notebook. His shoulders stayed straight. His eyes never left the audience. "I know it sounds impossible," he said. "People tell me that all the time." A few people shifted in their seats. Nathan's smile remained. "Then maybe they have a point," he replied. The crowd chuckled again. Elijah nodded once. "Maybe," he said. "But people used to say other things were impossible too." The room grew slightly quieter. The giant screens reflected the bright stage lights across rows of faces. Somewhere near the back, a chair creaked. A camera lens zoomed closer. Elijah slowly opened his notebook. Page after page revealed sketches, numbers, and handwritten notes. Not childish doodles. Plans, ideas, calculations. Months of work carefully arranged across hundreds of pages. The nearest audience members leaned forward. Nathan's smile faded just a little. Elijah turned another page. "Every night," he said softly, "my mom told me that a dream isn't measured by how big it sounds. It's measured by how much you're willing to work for it." The hall became quieter still. Then Elijah looked directly at Nathan Whitmore and lifted the notebook slightly higher. "Would you like to know why this dream matters so much to me?" The room fell completely silent. For several long seconds, nobody answered. The silence felt strange inside a room that had been filled with laughter only moments earlier. Nathan Whitmore glanced around, as if expecting someone else to respond first. No one did. Elijah stood quietly beside the microphone, his blue notebook still open in his hands. The bright lights reflected across its worn pages. Finally, Nathan leaned back in his chair and shrugged. "Go ahead," he said. "We are listening." His tone was polite, but there was still doubt behind it. Elijah nodded. "My dream matters because I know what it feels like to have nowhere to go." A murmur moved through the audience. Elijah lowered his eyes briefly toward the notebook. "When I was 7 years old, my mother and I spent many nights sleeping in our minivan." The room grew still again. "We parked behind grocery stores, near gas stations, anywhere we could stay until morning." Several audience members exchanged glances. Nathan's expression tightened slightly. Elijah turned another page. The paper was covered with careful handwriting. "My mother worked hard every day. She always told me that difficult seasons do not last forever. She believed things would get better." His voice remained calm, but every word seemed heavier than the last. "Some nights were cold. Some nights were lonely. But every night she made sure I believed tomorrow could be different." Near the back of the hall, a woman quietly wiped her eyes. Elijah continued. "One evening, I asked her why there were so many kids living like we were. She told me something I never forgot." He paused. "She said that sometimes people are so busy building bigger houses that they forget some children do not have one at all." The audience remained silent. Nathan no longer looked amused. Instead, he found himself staring at the small boy standing alone beneath the lights. Elijah opened to another section of the notebook. The pages contained sketches of buildings, playgrounds, classrooms, gardens, and sleeping areas. "This is not just a dream," he said. "It is a plan." More people leaned forward. Every page represents something I learned. Every number was checked. Every drawing was changed over and over until it made sense. Nathan folded his hands together. "You did all of this yourself?" Elijah nodded. "After school. On weekends. Whenever I could." Nathan looked at the notebook again. The careful details did not look like the work of someone seeking attention. They looked like the work of someone preparing for something important. Elijah slowly reached into the notebook and pulled out a stack of envelopes secured with a rubber band. The paper was worn from being handled so often. "These are letters," he said. "Letters I sent asking for help." The audience watched closely. Some were answered. Most were not. Nathan felt an unexpected tension settle into his chest as Elijah lifted the stack slightly higher. Then the boy looked directly toward the front row. "One of those letters," he said softly, "was sent to your company, Mr. Whitmore." The words seemed to hang in the air long after Elijah spoke them. "One of those letters was sent to your company, Mr. Whitmore." A faint murmur swept across the convention hall. Nathan Whitmore remained still, but several executives seated beside him shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Elijah carefully removed a single envelope from the stack. Unlike the others, this one had been folded and unfolded so many times that the edges were soft and worn. He looked down at it for a moment before speaking again. "I mailed this letter 11 months ago," he said. "I spent 3 days writing it because I wanted every word to be right." The giant screens captured the envelope in his small hands. The audience watched in silence. "I was not asking for money," Elijah continued. "I was asking for advice." Nathan's eyebrows lifted slightly. Elijah opened the letter and revealed several pages covered in neat handwriting. "I told your company about my idea. I explained how children living in cars, shelters, and temporary housing often struggle to find quiet places to study. I asked if someone could tell me what I was missing in my plan." He smiled faintly. "I figured people who build successful companies probably know how to solve difficult problems." A few people in the audience exchanged glances. The humor that had filled the room earlier was completely gone now. Elijah turned another page. "For weeks, I checked the mailbox every day after school." His voice remained calm, but something about its honesty made the room feel smaller. "Every afternoon I hoped there would be a reply." Nathan looked down at the table in front of him. Elijah continued. "Eventually, an envelope arrived." He lifted another piece of paper from inside the notebook. "I thought it was the best day of my life." The audience listened carefully, but it was a standard response letter. He paused. "It thanked me for my interest and wished me success." No anger appeared in his voice. No bitterness. Just simple truth. Somehow that made the moment even heavier. "I kept the letter anyway," Elijah said, "because at least somebody read my name." A woman near the front quietly covered her mouth. Nathan slowly exhaled. Elijah reached into the notebook once more and revealed page after page of notes. "After that, I kept working. Every time someone said my idea was unrealistic, I researched another solution. Every time someone ignored me, I learned something new." He flipped through sketches of classrooms, community gardens, libraries, and study centers. "This notebook became my answer." The audience leaned forward as images filled the giant screens. Hundreds of pages. Hundreds of hours. Nathan stared at the notebook, and for the first time all afternoon, he no longer saw a child standing on the stage. He saw determination. He saw preparation. He saw effort. Then Elijah pulled a small photograph from the back cover and held it up. "There is one more reason I never gave up," he said softly. As the image appeared on the giant screens behind him, Nathan felt an unexpected chill run through his chest. The photograph filled the giant screens above the stage. It showed a smiling woman sitting beside a younger Elijah on the hood of an old minivan beneath the summer sunset. Her arm rested around his shoulders. His head leaned against hers. The image was simple, but the emotion inside it seemed to reach every corner of the convention hall. Elijah looked up at the photograph and smiled softly. "That is my mom," he said. Her name was Denise Brooks. The room remained silent. She believed that every person deserves a place where they feel safe, welcome, and important. He paused. "Even when we did not have much, she always shared what we had." Elijah carefully held the photograph in both hands. "Whenever I wanted to quit, she reminded me that difficult situations do not define who you are." His eyes moved across the audience. "She said character is what you choose when nobody is watching." Several people lowered their eyes. Others leaned forward, listening more closely than before. Nathan Whitmore found himself staring at the photograph. Something about the woman's smile felt familiar, though he could not explain why. Elijah returned the picture to the notebook. 3 years ago, my mom gave me this notebook. He lifted the worn blue cover slightly. She told me that if I ever had a dream worth chasing, I should write it down before fear convinced me to forget it. A faint smile appeared on a few faces throughout the room. Elijah opened to the first page. The paper looked older than the others. This was the very first drawing. The giant screens displayed a rough sketch made with a pencil. It was uneven and simple, clearly created by a child. Soft laughter returned for a moment, but this time it was warm, not mocking. Elijah smiled too. I know. It looked terrible. A few audience members chuckled. But my mom told me every great idea starts out looking a little messy. The room relaxed slightly. Then Elijah turned to another page. Then another. Then another. With every page, the drawings became more detailed. The plans became more organized. The numbers became more precise. It was like watching a dream grow up one page at a time. Nathan followed every image. He could see years of effort hidden between the pages. Years of learning. Years of refusing to quit. Elijah finally stopped at a page near the center of the notebook. This is where everything changed. The audience watched closely, because this is where I stopped asking whether my dream was possible. He looked directly at Nathan and started asking what it would take to make it real. Nathan felt something shift inside him. The confidence that had fueled his earlier laughter no longer felt comfortable. For the first time that afternoon, he found himself wondering whether he had underestimated the boy standing beneath the lights. Then Elijah slowly removed a folded piece of paper from between the pages. Unlike the others, this paper looked older, more worn, almost treasured. He unfolded it carefully and looked down at the handwriting before taking a breath. This, he said softly, is the last note my mom ever wrote to me. The convention hall felt impossibly quiet. Even the faint hum of the projectors seemed distant as Elijah carefully unfolded the note. The paper had yellowed slightly with age. The creases were soft from being opened and read countless times. He looked down at the familiar handwriting and smiled. It was the kind of smile that carried both love and memory. My mom wrote this 6 months before she passed away, he said softly. I keep it with me everywhere. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Elijah took a slow breath and began to read. Dear Elijah, if you are reading this one day without me nearby, I want you to remember something. Do not let anyone decide how big your dreams are allowed to be. Most people see the world as it is. A few people imagine what it could become. Be one of those people. The words echoed gently through the hall. Several audience members lowered their eyes. Elijah continued. You will meet people who are smarter than you, richer than you, more powerful than you. Listen to them. Learn from them. But never believe they are more valuable than you. Nathan Whitmore felt something tighten in his chest. Elijah's voice remained steady. And when people laugh at your dream, do not waste time being angry. Just keep building it. The room became even quieter. Elijah paused for a moment before reading the final lines. The world changes because ordinary people decide not to quit. Promise me you will be one of them. He slowly lowered the paper. No applause followed. No one seemed willing to break the silence. The note felt larger than the room itself. Elijah carefully folded it and placed it back inside the notebook. I made that promise, he said, and every page in this notebook is part of keeping it. The giant screens displayed more sketches. Community kitchens, study rooms, small apartments for families in transition, outdoor gardens, spaces filled with sunlight and learning. Nathan stared at the images. Earlier, he had seen a child's fantasy. Now he saw years of discipline, years of effort, years of believing in something despite having every reason to stop. A member of the judging panel finally cleared his throat. Elijah, he said, these plans are impressive, but projects like this cost millions of dollars. Do you really believe you can make it happen? Several heads nodded. It was the question many had been thinking. Elijah did not hesitate. Not by myself. The answer surprised them. Then why keep going? The judge asked. Elijah looked around the hall. Because every big project starts with someone willing to take the first step. He lifted the notebook slightly. This notebook is my first step. His eyes moved across the audience before settling briefly on Nathan Whitmore. The real question is whether anyone else is willing to take the second one. The question lingered over the audience like a challenge nobody expected to receive. Whether anyone else is willing to take the second one. For several seconds, no one spoke. The bright lights reflected across rows of thoughtful faces. Elijah remained standing beside the microphone, holding the blue notebook against his chest. He was not pleading. He was not trying to impress anyone anymore. He had simply told the truth. Then a voice broke the silence. "Good intentions are admirable," said a man seated near the center of the judging panel. His name was Charles Everett, a real estate executive known for evaluating projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He adjusted his glasses and folded his hands. But the world does not run on dreams. It runs on numbers. Several audience members nodded. Charles looked toward the giant screens displaying Elijah's plans. These buildings, these programs, these services, they all cost money. Staff, maintenance, insurance, utilities. Have you calculated what it would actually take to operate something like this? A few people shifted in their seats. The question sounded reasonable. Practical. Difficult. Elijah looked at the man and nodded respectfully. "Yes, sir." Charles raised an eyebrow. "You have." Elijah opened the notebook once more. Page 187. A faint ripple of surprise moved through the room. He flipped through the pages carefully until he found the section he wanted. "Estimated annual operating costs," he said, "adjusted for inflation projections over 10 years. Several judges immediately leaned forward. Charles blinked. Elijah continued. Page 192 contains partnership models. Page 204 includes volunteer integration plans. Page 217 compares community-supported housing programs in 6 states. The room became noticeably quieter. Charles slowly removed his glasses. "You researched all of this yourself?" Elijah nodded. Whenever the library was open, Nathan Whitmore watched the exchange closely. Earlier, he would have assumed the boy was repeating information he barely understood. Now he was not so sure. Charles studied the pages displayed on the giant screens. Detailed charts appeared. Cost estimates. Resource projections. Community partnerships. Nothing was perfect, but everything showed effort. Serious effort. "You are still assuming people will help," Charles said. "What if they do not?" Elijah smiled slightly. "Then I keep looking until I find the people who will." A few audience members quietly laughed, but this time with admiration rather than mockery. Charles opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time all afternoon, he seemed unsure how to respond. Nathan felt something unfamiliar stirring inside him. Respect. Not because the boy had all the answers, but because he refused to surrender to questions designed to discourage him. Elijah closed the notebook gently. "I know I cannot build this tomorrow," he said. "I know I cannot build it alone. But every community that exists today started because somebody believed it should exist before anyone else did." His voice remained calm. "I am not asking people to believe in me. I am asking them to believe in what could happen if nobody gives up." The audience fell silent once more. Then Nathan Whitmore glanced toward the giant screen and suddenly noticed something in one of Elijah's diagrams that made his heart skip. A name he had not seen in nearly 20 years. Nathan Whitmore stared at the screen, barely hearing the faint sounds of the audience around him. Buried in the corner of Elijah's diagram was a name written in small blue letters beneath one of the proposed learning centers. Denise Community House. The air seemed to leave his lungs. Denise. He had not spoken that name aloud in nearly 20 years. His eyes remained fixed on the screen. Elijah noticed the change in his expression but continued speaking. "Every building in the plan has a purpose," he explained. "The study center helps students catch up in school. The family apartments provide temporary housing. The gardens help families grow food together. And the first building would be named after my mom." His voice softened. "Because she never stopped believing people could help each other." Nathan's hands tightened slightly on the edge of the table. Memories he had not visited in years began returning with surprising clarity. A small community college. Late nights in the library. A young woman with a warm smile who always volunteered to help classmates. Denise. Before the success. Before the headlines. Before private jets and corporate boardrooms. Back when his future had been uncertain and every opportunity felt out of reach. He remembered one conversation in particular. They had been sitting outside beneath an old oak tree after class. Nathan had been frustrated because investors had rejected his first business proposal. Denise had laughed gently and told him something he never forgot. People are not investments, she had said. Communities are. At the time he had smiled and moved on. Years later, he built a company worth billions. Somewhere along the way, he stopped thinking about that conversation. Elijah flipped to another page. I wanted every part of this project to create opportunity, not charity. Several judges nodded. People deserve chances to build stable lives, not just temporary solutions. The audience remained completely engaged. Charles Everett sat silently now. Even the judges who had challenged Elijah earlier seemed focused on every word. Nathan barely noticed them. His attention remained locked on the name beneath the diagram. Denise Community House. Finally, he raised his hand. The movement immediately drew attention. A murmur passed through the hall. Elijah stopped speaking and looked toward him. Nathan stood slowly. Earlier, he had been the source of laughter. Now the room watched him with curiosity. Elijah, he said carefully, your mother's name was Denise Brooks? The question surprised everyone. Elijah nodded. Yes, sir. Nathan swallowed. Where did she grow up? Elijah looked puzzled but answered. In Columbus, Ohio. The room grew still. Nathan felt his pulse quicken. Did she ever attend Franklin Community College? Elijah blinked. She did. A ripple of confusion spread across the audience. Nathan's face had gone pale. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he lowered his eyes toward the notebook in Elijah's hands. I knew your mother, he said quietly. And suddenly the entire room seemed to forget how to breathe. The silence that followed felt almost unreal. Hundreds of people sat motionless beneath the bright lights, their attention fixed on the stage and the man who had just spoken. Elijah stared at Nathan Whitmore, unsure what to say. You knew my mother? He asked softly. Nathan nodded. His confident posture had vanished. The polished executive who had entered the convention hall earlier seemed suddenly distant. A long time ago, he said. Before any of this. His hand moved slowly across the table in front of him. Before the company. Before the success. Before anyone knew my name. The audience listened carefully. Nathan looked toward the photograph still displayed on the giant screens. Denise's smile seemed to illuminate the room. Your mother was one of the kindest people I ever met. Elijah's eyes widened slightly. Nathan continued. When I was struggling, she was one of the few people who believed I could build something meaningful. The room remained perfectly still. She challenged me when I was wrong, encouraged me when I was discouraged, and reminded me that success only matters if it helps other people. Nathan lowered his eyes for a moment. I wish I had remembered that lesson sooner. The honesty in his voice surprised everyone. Even Charles Everett looked stunned. Elijah carefully stepped closer to the microphone. She talked about helping people all the time, he said. She said communities are stronger when nobody gets forgotten. Nathan closed his eyes briefly. The words landed with unexpected force. Communities are stronger when nobody gets forgotten. It was almost identical to something Denise had told him decades earlier beneath that old oak tree. For a moment, it felt as though time had folded in on itself. Nathan looked back at Elijah. Your mother always carried a small notebook. Elijah blinked. The blue one. Nathan nodded slowly. She used to write ideas in it. Dreams. Plans. Things she hoped would make the world better. A murmur spread through the audience. Elijah looked down at the notebook in his hands. This was hers, he said quietly. Nathan's expression softened. I thought so. The realization moved through the room like a wave. The notebook was not just a collection of plans. It was a bridge between generations. Between a mother who believed in possibility and a son who refused to let that belief disappear. Nathan stood from his seat and slowly walked toward the stage. Nobody spoke. Nobody even seemed to breathe. Each step echoed across the hall. When he reached the front row, he stopped and looked up at Elijah. The boy stood tall, clutching the notebook against his chest. Nathan's voice was barely above a whisper. There is something you deserve to know. Elijah watched him carefully. Nathan swallowed. That letter you sent to my company. He paused. I never saw it. A ripple moved through the audience. Nathan looked toward the envelope displayed on the giant screen. But after everything I have heard today, I think I need to read it now. The hall remained silent as Nathan Whitmore accepted the envelope from Elijah's hands. The paper felt surprisingly light, yet it seemed to carry the weight of every choice he had made over the past 20 years. He unfolded the letter carefully and began reading. The giant screens displayed the handwritten words for everyone to see. Dear Mr. Whitmore, my name is Elijah Brooks. I am 9 years old. I know you are very busy, but I hope someone can read this. I have an idea that might help children who do not always have a safe place to sleep or study. Nathan continued reading. His voice grew quieter with every sentence. My mom taught me that problems are invitations to build solutions. I do not have money or connections, but I have a plan. If you can tell me what I am doing wrong, I will keep learning until I get it right. Several people in the audience wiped their eyes. Nathan reached the final paragraph and stopped. For a moment, he simply stared at the page. Then he read the last lines aloud. If nobody can help me right now, that is okay. I will keep working. Maybe one day I will be the person who helps someone else. The room fell completely still. Nathan lowered the letter. The same room that had laughed at Elijah earlier now sat in absolute silence. He looked at the boy standing before him and saw something far more valuable than talent. He saw perseverance. He saw character. He saw the very qualities that had once helped him build his own future. Slowly, Nathan stepped onto the stage. Every eye followed him. When he reached Elijah, he stopped and looked directly at him. I owe you an apology, he said. The words echoed through the hall. When you first walked onto this stage, I saw a child with a dream. I should have seen a young man with a plan. Elijah stood quietly, clutching the blue notebook. Nathan continued. Your mother believed in building communities. She believed people mattered more than profits. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that lesson. His voice softened. Thank you for reminding me. Then Nathan turned toward the audience. Today, I am committing the first investment into this project. Gasps spread across the room. Not because I feel sorry for Elijah. Not because this is charity. But because good ideas deserve opportunity, and determination deserves partnership. Applause erupted throughout the convention hall. People rose to their feet. Judges stood. Executives stood. Investors stood. Yet Elijah's eyes remained fixed on the notebook in his hands. Nathan noticed and smiled. Your mother started that notebook, he said. You filled it. Now let us build what comes next. Beneath the bright lights, with hundreds of people standing around them, Elijah slowly handed the notebook to Nathan. Together they opened it to the very first page, where a rough pencil drawing of a small community house still remained. And for the first time, that impossible dream no longer looked impossible at all.